Over 1 million times a year, British police arrest suspected criminals to take them down to police stations. What happens next is a major decision, not just for the suspects, but also for the police and community. Under a rule of law, police may not legally detain suspects behind bars without sufficient evidence or reasons to do so. But even when the evidence supports a criminal charge, over half of all defendants will be released on bail or with an official caution that creates a permanent record of their guilt. Others will be held overnight or even longer, ensuring that they do not attempt to flee from justice or commit another crime. The police who make these decisions are called custody sergeants, experienced officers who are in charge of what British police call custody suites, Americans call lockups, and Australians call the watch house. British custody sergeants have the same powers to decide what other countries reserve for judges, magistrates, or bail commissioners. They bring enormous knowledge and skill to their jobs. But what the police computers do not tell them is what they need to know most. How dangerous is this suspect? How likely is he or she to cause major harm if we let him or her out of here? What can be predicted about the suspect's behavior? Crucially, and the main point of this video chapter, how accurate can these predictions be? My name is Lawrence Sherman. I'm the director of the Cambridge Center for Evidence-Based Policing. For over 40 years in over 30 countries, my colleagues and I have worked with police agencies to help them make better decisions. Our center provides statistical support for practical guidance based on big data. This video is about our work with Durham Constabulary, the first police service in England, and probably the world, to build its own big data into processing every arrestee. In this video, you can learn three big things. First, why predictions about arrestees are so important. Second, how Durham reduced its prediction errors by using big data. Third, how any police agency can match Durham's success. The main purpose of this video is to give police and courts better advice about predicting who will commit a very serious crime very quickly and who will not. That kind of advice might well prevent murder, as the tragic case of Gary Newlove showed.
An ordinary man on an ordinary street on what began as an ordinary summer's evening. A father beaten to death in front of his 3 young daughters. The murder of Gary Newlove outside his home in August 2007 was one of those crimes that shock people to the core. A third suspect was 19-year-old Adam Swellings. He was already well known to police and had several convictions for violent assaults and antisocial behavior. In fact, Adam Swellings had only been released from jail on the morning of the attack after pleading guilty to a violent assault on another man. He'd been bailed by magistrates against police advice, with the condition that he stayed out of Warrington.
Sadly, he did not stay out of Warrington, and he did kill Gary Newlove. Yet the need for accurate predictions is not just about dangerous people. It is also about people who may look dangerous, but really are not. For every case in which a suspect on bail kills someone, tens of thousands of nonviolent suspects are locked up longer than necessary. Separating these dangerous needles in the haystack from the rest of the hay is a tough job. Computers can now make that job easier by providing good statistics to supplement police experience. These needles in the haystack are too rare for anyone to meet enough of them to spot them on sight. If police had told the magistrate about a big data forecast when that 19-year-old suspect was released, Gary Newlove might still be alive today. If police in 2007 had been able to use the new system in Durham, they could have used the combined experience of thousands of custody sergeants, enough for assessing over 100,000 suspects. And on that basis, Durham police today can know whether somebody they are about to release, such as this suspect, is at low risk of high harm, which we color code as green, or such as this suspect, who is at medium risk of high harm, color coded as amber. or even this suspect who is at high risk of high harm, coded bright red. That much clarity might have warned the magistrate how very dangerous Gary Newlove's killer really was. And this color-coded system was exactly what Chief Constable Mike Barton got from the Monument Trust when the Cambridge Center for Evidence-Based Policing used Durham's data to install a highly accurate harm assessment risk tool, or HART, in every custody suite in Durham Constabulary. We talked to Mr. Barton at his office in Durham Police Headquarters. When did you first hear about the idea of using more than just those kind of common sense and indeed untested principles, but using big data instead to actually find the needles in the haystack who are a lot more dangerous, or indeed how many people are really hay and you can just let them go quite safely for the public?
Well, for the last 3 or 4 years now, we've been sending senior staff down to Cambridge University to your evidence-based policing course, and it's as a result of conversations with those students. They've come back and they said, we've been exposed to this, we think that we can actually use the constabulary as a test bed. And I've always made it clear to Cambridge University that the students we send down there will come back and they will have carte blanche to implement the ideas that you want to test. And it's as a result of that's why we've embarked on this process.
One of the Cambridge students the Chief Constable mentioned was Sheena Irwin, who is the head of criminal justice for the Durham Police.
For me, where the evidence-based policing and forecasting side of things collided with my world is, as a head of criminal justice, we deal with all those cases and we want to make sure that the right ones go into the system. And so if we've got custody sergeants who are potentially charging cases to go into the court system that don't necessarily need to be in the court system, we need to put a framework in place around that. And then it's looking at what's the best framework to be in place. And having gone on to the Cambridge MST programme, seeing some of the prediction and see the prediction methods used there by Dr. Jeffrey Barnes was something that we really wanted to explore.
Now, it's relatively easy to have the idea of targeting very dangerous people and pretty safe people. The hard part is actually taking the data from one police department to identify exactly what computerized variables will predict who is dangerous and who isn't. And the man who's pioneered the doing of this in operating agencies, Dr. Jeffrey Barnes, who is a lecturer in evidence-based policing at Cambridge University and who's been working here in Durham to do this for the first time in a police agency. So the basic idea here is to take one set of data to make a prediction and then to take another set of data to see if the prediction was correct.
That's essentially correct, yes.
Right.
There's a difference between what we would refer to as false positives and false negatives.
So if somebody commits a murder who you didn't think was high risk, that's a whole lot worse than somebody who is judged to be high risk, but they're really low risk.
Exactly right. What I refer to them as is cautious errors, where we are over forecasting the level of risk, or dangerous errors. We would prefer to avoid the dangerous errors.
Now, many governments require police to perform what are called risk assessments, but they are not anything like what Durham has done. The major difference is that those so-called risk assessments do not come with an acknowledged error rate. No prediction is perfect 100% of the time. Weather forecasts always come with a stated chance of error, so why not forecasts of serious crime? By using the Cambridge approach, Durham has actually tested their predictions to find out exactly what the error rate is, and especially the error rate for the most dangerous errors, the false negatives predicting no danger when a suspect is really very dangerous. That is why custody officers need to know the basic difference between false positives and false negatives. And when they understand that, they will know that the risk of a dangerous error in Durham is only 2%. The Durham forecast is 98% accurate. A false positive is an overly cautious error, predicting that something will happen, but it does not. Like the shepherd boy who cried wolf when there were only lambs in the field. A false negative is a more dangerous error, predicting that something will not happen, but it does, like the shepherd boy who slept while a wolf was stealing his sheep. The big question you may ask is whether these statistical harm assessments really do improve on the decisions the police are already making on the basis of their experience alone. Dr. Jeffrey Barnes has built an answer to that question right into the HART system. As of August 2016, Barnes had compared the predictions of the computer to the predictions of the custody sergeants in over 400 cases. He found that police had agreed with the computer about half the time, but the computer arguably did better than custody sergeants in the other half of these cases. So 98% of the time, you're safely saying this person's not going to commit a serious crime. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So 98% of the time that this model forecasts somebody as low risk, they will not commit a serious crime within the next 2 years.
That'd be pretty hard for a human to match, I guess.
Well, the model's taking a lot of different experiences. There's over 104,000 custody events in this model.
So that would be like one police officer having 104,000 arrests that they could follow up and see what happened.
Absolutely right, and also trying to simulate making millions of different decisions along the way based on what they know about the offender.
Not likely that any one human being can do that. So how do you explain the idea of a false positive or a false negative to custody sergeants who are making these decisions all the time, which might be false positives or false negatives? How do you tell them what it amounts to conceptually?
First of all, I don't use the term false negative, false
That's
positive.
probably a good idea.
The way I talk about it is that not all errors are equal, and the worst kind of error would be if the model forecast low and the offender turned out high. That would be the worst kind of error for us. And equally, the next error in a rank, if you like, the next error is your false positive, where we're looking at somebody who's forecast high, who turns out to be low risk because we've potentially put more resources into those, needlessly, arguably. So for me, when I explain it to them, rather than use those statistical terms, it's described as forecast high, turned out low, and vice versa.
And when you have that discussion with them, do they pretty much get that?
Yeah, they do. They absolutely get it when you say someone was forecast low and turned out high, because that's the error that nobody wants to happen. Nobody wants that error to happen. You don't want to release somebody for them to go on and potentially assault and wound somebody.
We recently had a case, I think it's 4 years ago, where we had a registered sex offender who committed shoplifting. And they went on to commit a heinous murder. And knowing what we know now, there are definitely triggers that we would have spotted in those circumstances. And actually, we were prosecuting that person. It's just the wrong bail when the murder took place. So we are definitely adding to our body of knowledge.
I think this is very important, Larry, because this is where they get the confidence from in the system and the confidence from the senior managers, and we're trying to do the right thing. If you're trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, and there's a sound evidence base and rationale for doing what we're doing, and ultimately if that person then goes on to commit a murder, then as an organisation we've got to say, we support you, you did the right thing, and this is why we did it. We're not going to summarily hang you out to dry. No, it's an organisational decision. You were part of the process and we support you through that. And if that is a big selling point for them. And if we support them that, and as we do in many other things, then you start getting the buy-in.
I'm confident that even if there is only a 1 or 2% error rate, which is pretty remarkable, and that's what I understand it is, 1 or 2%. Right. So 98% accurate, that's pretty phenomenal, isn't it? So bad things happen, and I'm not complacent or cavalier about bad things happening. I'm just really clear that by far and away the best way to deal with people who are low risk is not to put them into the court process, because it makes things worse. So why would we do that?
So how can your police agency build on the success of the Durham pioneers? One way to do that is to visit the Durham custody suites and to see the HART system in action. But if going to Durham is a trip too far, you can listen now to what the HART team had to say about the process of developing their system. Here we have a Cambridge University academic. We have police officers. We have civilian staff in a police department. We have this humongous project that has required endless numbers of meetings. How do you put up with this university types? And how well has this all worked out?
I think it's been a very pragmatic, practical relationship, and understanding how the research and the algorithmic harm assessment tools can actually help us in our everyday business. So we've often said implementation is hard, and we've had to work together as a very joined up team to say, okay, what is it we want to achieve? And the general drive of the team has always been, we want to be able to say, how do we reduce the harm, the potential harm to the public, and to reduce reoffending so that the people never come back through our doors. So that Mike, the chief, will talk about problem solving. This is problem solving on an epic scale. It's about how do we actually reduce harm with a forecasting tool and support our offenders to change their lives, if you like.
So how far do you think we could go with this? If I'm a response team officer, I go to the scene of a bar fight, and we get people sorted. Maybe not everybody was swinging when we got there, so before we even make an arrest decision, could we, check up Jeffrey Barnes and see whether he's low risk or high?
I think there are so many things that we go to where we're trying to determine potential harm, all the way from child sexual abuse to types of offenders. We've got serious perpetrators of violence that we've used. As John said, we've got mayors. So in every circumstance where we go to in policing now, we're trying to guess what potential harm there is and how do we reduce it. So the scope for forecasting or an assessment tool could be limitless.
Yeah. The Durham pioneers in evidence-based policing are doing much more with the harm assessment risk tool than just making release decisions. In a time of limited resources, targeting prevention where harm is greatest is more important than ever. And in many cases, arrest alone may be sufficient to stop reoffending, even without prosecution. Many police experiments have reached the same conclusion that Chief Constable Barton has, that arrest itself is enough punishment, and that often no more needs to be done with many suspects to break a pattern of criminal behavior.
When you get arrested, not having been arrested, I'm sure the shame button kicks in. And shame is a massive driver for changing the way that people see the world. So, albeit we say, and we haven't prosecuted, so we've done nothing, hang on a minute, Larry.
You just arrested them.
We've arrested them. We've searched them. We've taken the property off them. We've asked them all sorts of what intrusive, demeaning questions. They've seen the inside of a cell door, and then we say, oh, we're not going to do anything with you. We've already done it.
This video is just one example of the growing global movement for evidence-based policing. Harm assessment with big data is a key example of using research evidence for better results. Harm assessment helps police not only to prevent violence, but also to prevent people from losing more liberty than is necessary in their time spent behind bars. This video has shown, first, why the Cambridge approach to harm forecasting is so important to policing. Second, the video has summarized years of work in the Durham Constabulary. Third, and most important, this video may interest you or your community in trying out the HART approach. And if it does, both the Durham Constabulary and the Cambridge Center for Evidence-Based Policing will be happy to help you.